Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny Aristi if you don't already know, and today I'm going to be going to Chattanooga, or actually I went there over the summer. I'm obviously back now at home and it's clearly fall right now. But on this trip up to Chattanooga, I decided to take nothing but back roads and also take nothing but Fuji C200 so I could do a proper review on it. Now on this trip we decided to take nothing but back roads because the gas was cheap, which brings me actually to my first point about Fuji C200. You see, the cool thing about Fuji C200 is that it actually is the cheapest film on the market. Right now it's ringing in about $4 on B&H, and you can't really find a lot of films that are cheaper. Since Kodak Color Plus used to be $3.50 earlier in the year, now it's up to about $5 to $6 a roll. You get 36 exposures for $4 with C200. You see, the cool thing about Fuji C200 is that it actually is the cheapest film on the market. Right now it's ringing in about $4 on B&H, and you can't really find a lot of films that are cheaper. Since Kodak Color Plus used to be $3.50 earlier in the year, now it's up to about $5 to $6 a roll. You get 36 exposures for $4 with C200. And honestly, even though it's a cheap film, the image quality doesn't really get sacrificed in that price. What I mean by that is that Fuji C200, although cheap, doesn't perform like a cheap film. It still does really well getting overexposed by at least a stop or two, but if you're trying to underexpose this film, I would highly suggest against it. Fuji C200 still has really good image quality, although its grain is a little bit popped up and just a little too big for my taste. It still gives you sharp images dependent on the light and how you shoot the film. My main point here is that although Fuji C200 is $4, it performs kind of more so like an $8 or $9 film that you'd be paying for today. Now it's not going to beat Fuji Pro 400H, that's obviously professional film, but for consumer grade film, C200 tends to perform very well. Now another area where this film performs really just quite excellent is in its rendering of colors. I noticed that a lot of the colors were very true to life, and when I ended up shooting that day, when I scanned it, developed it, did all of that, I finally got the final product and realized it was very much what I saw that day. The lighting was rendered well, the colors were rendered well, and I noticed something, that reds and greens really punch out and saturate just a tiny bit. I noticed while I was shooting pictures at Carter's Lake for landscapes, or when I was shooting at the pedestrian bridge over at Chattanooga, that blues really render quite well. For instance, in my landscape shot, the mountains seemed really nice and blue, also because the rains were rolling in and you could see some of the rain actually crack through the clouds. C200 did a really good job of contrasting between the greens and the blues. This is honestly why Fuji C200 is perfect for this kind of photography for street and landscape. That magenta filter also helps everything pop out a little bit more, especially colors, and enhances every single shot to a way that really is pleasing to the eye, and maybe even stop some of those Instagram scrollers from scrolling past your photo. Now, where most people have a lot of issues with this film, it tends to be when it comes to portraits. This is not a portrait film, although it is a consumer film and is meant to be for like family shots or just day-to-day photography. It doesn't do too well with skin tones. Now, what do I mean by that is that, well, if your friends are darker toned, it's gonna turn them a little bit orange. For example, when I was shooting on the pedestrian bridge, I noticed people with more tan skin tended to turn really kind of like a muddy orange. So for darker skin tones, this film isn't really ideal. Now for lighter skin tones, it isn't that bad. So Fuji C200 is still good for portraits, it just depends on the skin tones and how much work you really want to put into it. I'm not saying that it's impossible with orange skin tones or more darker brown melanin. It's just gonna be a little difficult to kind of go through that process, and you may have to scan it at high resolution so that you do have all that latitude to work with. With lighter skin tones, all you really have to do is shift the hue a little bit, and that's it. I noticed that with my friends' portraits, I just often would shoot this film and find really pleasing skin tones out of it, especially in the lighter skin tones, not so much in the darker skin tones. For instance, with my friend Dylan, he's a lighter skin tone, and some of those pictures actually came out to be, well, some of my favorite portraits. Where I really noticed the problems with the skin tones though were usually in like harsh light. Whenever you get harsh light on the skin tones, the pink really does show up on lighter skin tones and darker skin tones all across the board. There's just something about it where you start to overexpose this by 2 stops. Now you're gonna start having color shifts and problems in your skin tones. I found it extremely difficult to fix it whenever this came down to it. Like for instance, the picture I took of my friend Dylan when he was against this kind of like viney wall, I noticed that I really couldn't fix any of his skin tones, and he still, no matter how much I try, still looks a little pinkish. Now, would I suggest this film for professional portraits? Probably not. This is really an emergency film for me. I usually have it in my bag just for a day-to-day kind of film, but if I run out of Portra 400 or 160, yeah, this is the film I'm gonna pop out. I'm gonna go with this over Superior. I know that sounds crazy, but I usually like to have a kind of pinkish lightish tone to my pictures and also add some vibrancy to them. My final thoughts on the film is that although Fuji C200 acts and performs like a professional film in certain circumstances, and its cheap price point really does make it very appealing, it is a film I would buy for day-to-day use, street photography and landscapes, but I would never use it in portrait shots unless I really needed to. But honestly, the film does really well regardless of what medium you're shooting at. If you're shooting portraits, landscapes, or street photography, this may actually enhance some of your style, or you might find your style with it. It's not a gimmicky film like the lomography films, but because of that magenta filter, it does have its own character and its own personality. So, in my opinion, buy C200, buy hundreds of boxes of it, buy 10, buy 20, buy however much you want to do, because honestly, this is a good day-to-day film that you can keep in your fridge for a long time, and whenever you want something to go take to maybe your quinceañera or something crazy like that, then pop in some C200 and it will look good. But thank you guys so much for listening to me and just paying attention and watching this video. I hope to shoot C200 with you guys someday, but before you leave, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the like button so I can get on that YouTube algorithm and all your other friends can find out about me.